both management studies as well as from neurology. Ellen sir met me last week and told me that you should do something different. And he gave me this. Initially, I was very hesitant. He told me, Kaushik, if the topic is too fluid, then you go to stroke management and recent advances. That when sir asks something like this, I feel any senior asks me something, I always try and see whether I can do my best effort. So as a student for both management as well as neurology, I would try to present this topic on time management, but this is different from the time management that we know. I'm not going to talk about how to organize yourself, what is good in life, how you should stay focused and all that, because I am learning that part myself. But what I'm going to introduce to you in the next 30 minutes or so is something that has been troubling me or something that has given me a different focus to see. And that first statement that I would start is time does not exist. Now, this is very important for you to understand that time does not exist, because whenever we use the word time, if you are knowing theoretical physicists like somebody like Albert Einstein, they all talk about time with reference to speed, that is the speed of light. Now, let me give you an example to start off with. Supposing, let us say, you are in planet Earth, and there is another planet B, which is 100 light years away from here. Okay, and that planet B has a telescope which can see Earth. Okay, and if that planet B is looking at Earth right now, the light is traveling at 100 light years away. That's the 100 light years away. So it should be seeing the year 1924 now, not 2024. So for him, we don't exist. I hope you are able to understand this. So when we talk about time, it's an abstract concept. Why am I saying abstract? It is a thought or an idea, but it does not have a physical or a concrete existence. It is intangible. You cannot feel the time passing around you. The way you feel time is the perception of change. I'll come to that. It is a non-physical nature. It doesn't have any physical entity. You cannot put a force, you cannot put a mass to it. And more importantly, it is created as a social construct. Anybody who has traveled abroad will know that there is something called a daylight saving time. How do you change time there? You save 1 hour early or you put 1 hour later. How do you do that? When you are in a busy conference, sometimes time just goes like this. When you are in a boring class, the time seems to prolong. So it's a very social construct. We construct it ourselves to make us feel that time is an entity, but time is not an entity. And when it is not an entity, managing it becomes a difficulty. Okay. So what is the official definition? So I'll try to give references just like the way we do in neurology. So what is time? Time is an abstract entity. And the most important thing is the physical reality is in a constant change. Time is an expression to give those experiences a value. For example, this plant over time from the seed has become into something like this, correct? So you start it after 1 week, after 2 weeks. This is my daughter's biology book, correct? So the days that we are talking about is the physical reality that is changing around us, and that is what we attribute it as time. Otherwise, time as an entity doesn't exist. So we are trying to see, supposing I say now, this existence, then this is like a fissure through which we see this. So if the plant is moving from the seed to the dicotyledon stage or two-leaf stage or whatever they call it, now doesn't move. It is the fissure through which you observe the changing reality. Okay, so first thing that we need to understand is time is a quantity that we as humans are giving to the change in the physical reality that is around us. Yesterday I was in Kolkata, today I am here. My physical reality that has changed over time. Okay. The next point that I want to tell you about is that since it is an abstract quantity, which means it is not fixed, it means time can be stretched. You can stretch your time. You have the power to stretch your time. What does that mean? This is called time dilation effect. And this time dilation effect is not something that I constructed in my mind over a peg of whiskey, but I thought for Goa, this is an ideal topic. Time dilation as a concept came from Albert Einstein, from the theory of relativity from which he is famously known. What does we think? Usually, we think of time like a clock, the clock that ticks the same way for everyone. But in the universe, time doesn't always move the same way. If you are closer to something super heavy, or if you are moving really fast, then time stretches. Let me explain this. This is how we think time is. If you see from 1 to 9, right? Equal parts, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. But there are places where between the fifth and sixth hour, you could actually stretch the time. Which means, this does not mean that you're stretching time itself, but you are stretching your perception of time, stretching the way that things change around you. For example, if you don't water your plants, the plants are going to die faster than what you expect. I hope you're able to understand what I'm trying to tell. So let's start with this. Is time dilation, is it theory or is it true? Can we really stretch time? Have there been experiments that have done that? So this is the experiment that we are talking about. It's called Heffel-Keating experiment. This famously demonstrated time dilation by comparing atomic clocks. So let us start with what is an atomic clock. An atomic clock is the most precise clock you could get. It is better than all your Swiss-made, German-made, any other kind of clocks because it is based on the decay of an atom. I think it is a cadmium atom or something like that. So based on the decay of an atom, every second it decays is equivalent to 1 second of time, correct? So what did they do? They placed 2 atomic clocks, one on Earth and one on a jet flight that was flying around, okay? And then what happened? Special relativity effect. The clocks on the jets ticked more slowly than those on the ground. So time for passengers on the plane was slightly lower than for the people on Earth. Vengamma ma'am and me, we came in flights today. I'm sure most of you would have come. More flight journeys, I think, would make us younger. But that is only by 0.0001 seconds or something like that. So, but the basic point is, when you are traveling at very high speeds, time slows down. And this is not a theoretical aspect. It is a practically or experimentally proven fact. This is because as jets approached at high speeds, time dilated for the moving clocks. What happened if the jet went out of the gravitational force? So supposing you put an atomic clock here on Earth and put another atomic clock into spaceship and send it up, then the clock on the spaceship was slower than the clock on Earth. So basically what am I saying? Conclusion was that the clocks on the jet showed a difference in time compared to ones on the ground, proving that both speed and gravity affects time flow. So how do you conclude this? Simple. Increases speed slows down time, and increasing in gravity slows down time. And both these concepts were experimentally proven, which means time is not a fixed quantity. Are we the only people who knew this or somebody else knew this? So before I go ahead, let's take a small mythology break. I'm very fond of these things. This is a story, I think in one of the Upanishads, it's called the story of Kakudmi. I don't know, the senior people would have known this. In Hindu mythology, there was a king called Kakudmi who had a daughter Revati. He decided to get his daughter married off to the most suitable bachelor on earth, like any other father. He made a list of candidates and went to Lord Brahma with his daughter in Brahmaloka to help him choose the best groom. So once he reached the Brahmaloka, Brahma was, as usual, listening to some music. He had to wait for some time to see that list. And then he showed that list to Brahma. Brahma laughed loudly and said, Kakudmi, all those people whom you have shown me in the list are already dead. Because the time that you have spent over here is completely different from the time you have spent on earth. Now, why is this happening? The Brahmaloka is supposed to be so many, yojanas away from the earth's gravitational force. So that is why when he was in Brahmaloka, he felt that the time was only 20 minutes, but on earth, the time had actually gone faster. So the theory of relativity was explained in Upanishads in those many days ahead, saying that as you move away from gravity, the time actually goes slow. Okay. So coming back to this, as you move away from the earth, time slows down, and it slows down relatively to the time on earth. That is why it is called relative theory, theory of relativity. Related to what? Related to some other fixed portion, which is the time on earth. So coming back to our concept, high speed slows down time, high gravity slows down time. But we just discussed that time is an abstract entity. Then what slows down? It is the processes that are around us, the changes around us that slows down. So that when time slows down, we perceive as if it is slowing down because the processes or the aging process or moving concept, whatever you're thinking of, slows down. So time is a measure of change or the rate at which things change. For any change to happen, there is a process that is required. aging, erosion, Platonic movement. So when they say time slows down, it just means that the processes slow down. So a famous scientist, Novikov, had mentioned this in his relativity book. A clock on a fast moving rocket ticks more slowly. The astronaut's heartbeat becomes more slowly. All biochemical processes in the body become slow. Electrons and atoms also oscillate more slowly. Absolutely all processes go at a lower rate, hence time itself has slowed down. This is very important. So when you are in the rocket, we perceive that everything has slowed down because the processes have slowed down, not the time itself. Now, why is this important? The most important part of relativity is this. This slowing down or speeding up process is relative to a reference point. For instance, the process inside an astronaut slows down relative to a human in Earth, but the astronaut is oblivious to this. He doesn't feel he's slowing down. Just like the king did not know that he has been here for more than centuries, same way the astronaut will not know that the process inside him is slowing down. Imagine two spaceships here, A and B crossing each other. When the person in A sees B, he will only remember that the B is moving. Or B sees A, she will think only that A is moving. They will not think that I am moving and he is moving and the relative velocities are cancelled. Before I go further, when we move fast in relation to an observer, our processes slow down. This is what I told about the rocket. But what if we are able to slow our metabolism naturally? If you have seen videos of people like Paramahamsa Yogananda or some other yogis, they bring down their heart rate and pulse rate to such low extent, they'd get clairvoyance. So what is the perception that we are seeing when if we were to reduce our heart rate and metabolic rate to slow down? Have you heard of this condition wherein we say in the last moments of your life, your entire life flashes in front of you? The word flash is used because time suddenly accelerates at places which you don't understand. So when your metabolic processes slow down, the time around you as a reference point changes. Perception of time. How do we perceive time? Have you ever asked yourself which is the sensory organ that actually perceives time? We have 5 senses that we are born with. Scientists believe that a complementary of all these senses together is what helps us perceive time. One such system is, of course, the suprachiasmatic nucleus and the circadian rhythm. We always talk about this. This is an internal clock that keeps beating. Now, before I go further, in our neurology, we used to remember something called explicit memory and implicit memory. How many of you knew that there is something called an explicit time and an implicit time? Explicit time refers to the duration of a stimulus. How long a particular music has been there? How long did the bell ring? How long did you hear that sound? That's an explicit stimulus. And most of this explicit stimulus comes from the prefrontal cortex or the higher evolved cortex. And there's something called an implicit time wherein it gauges the time between two stimuli. For example, tuck, 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 tuck. This movement is an implicit time, the rhythmicity. And this is predominantly controlled by your subcortical structures. Why am I saying this? It has been experimentally proven that rats can successfully estimate a time interval of 40 seconds despite having their entire cortex removed. Which means explicit timing is evolutionarily ahead. Implicit timing was always with us. Circadian rhythm, which happens every day, was always with us. To understand what this stimulus is was more of an explicit time which requires the prefrontal cortex. Time and metabolism. Experiments have shown us that metabolic rate has an impact on animals to their ability to perceive time. How many of you have watched the movie Spider-Man? You've all watched the movie Spider-Man, right? So the moment the spider behaves, everything slows around Pete Parker, you know. The reason is because his metabolic rate goes very high. If you accelerate your metabolism, time slows down around you. That is why an ant or a fly is able to perceive your sweat faster than you move, because they move faster. So whenever some animal's metabolism is very high, their perception of time slows down. For them, you are much, much slower than them. Okay. So do you experience time going fast when you're metabolically inert? Of course we do. Whenever we sleep. 6 or 7 hours of solid sleep, you don't even know that the time has passed. And that is when your metabolism is at its lowest level. So when your metabolism is at a very low level, time seems to move at a very different pace. Can we alter the perception of time by habit? That's another question. In an experiment conducted by Haggard and colleagues in 2002, participants pressed a button that triggered a flashlight at a distance after a slight delay of 100 milliseconds. By repeatedly engaging in this act, participants had adapted to the delay. That is, the moment they press, there is a 100 millisecond delay and then there is a light that is on. What did the experimenters do then? They removed this delay and then they said that, okay, now press the light and let's see what's happened. Press the button and what happens. The light came up immediately. In response, the subjects often thought that the flash had occurred even before the button was pressed. So once you were training to a delay and then you remove this delay, the mind frames as if this event has happened in the future, or it had happened earlier than what you could have pressed the button with. So does this mean that if we train under faster circumstances, we perceive the time to slow down? For example, if we train to read a research paper in 10 minutes, then if you get 30 minutes to go through that research paper, you will feel that you have too much time. Tachypsychia, neurological phenomena that alters the perception of time. You can Google this, it's there. During flight, fright and fight, whenever you are in a stressful situation, time slows down around you. The epinephrine or norepinephrine effect that comes around you, immediately the time slows down around you. So this is very important that we understood. Anxious people who are in severe anxiety also feel that time is very, very slow around them. So the same threat of stimulus at a higher level of epinephrine. What about younger people versus older people? For young people, time usually slows down, and for older people, the time is usually fast. Why is this? For young people, time perception begins as the prefrontal cortex develops. Till then, the subcortical effect of time interval, which we talked about, is already present. The engagement in activities establish these connections. So the child is metabolically and neurologically more active, making connections with each engagement. And this active learning makes the time slow down. Whereas for the older people, subcortical and cortical axes are already established. It is routine for them to go to the hospital, to see patients, everything is routine. And if there is no active learning, and if the old things are being repeated himself, then the time seems to go fast. Routine mundane activities, time moves fast, and you feel that there is no time for anything anymore. And this is the most important difference that I wanted to tell you. For example, you are engaging a child in physical activity. A child feels that I want to do this again and again, whereas you are fed up already. You feel that the time has already moved on. So my personal interpretation of this is, if you have an explicit timing and an implicit timing, every movement is observed and learned, and time moves slow. Like a child learning playfully, like a movie that you watch, If it is only implicit timing, what we do routinely every day, then subcortical connections happening subconsciously, times move fast, like brushing, bathing, running to work. Explicit timing plus implicit timing, but nothing to learn. For example, you are sitting in a boring lecture or this talk, then time moves extremely slow. Explicit timing plus implicit timing, but every moment looks precious. Then you feel that I don't have enough time. Going to a vacation, you want to relive those moments where your explicit timing, your implicit timing, and you feel that these are precious moments. Then your perception of time changes over there. So in simple words, implicit timing, time moves unnoticed and fast. Routine things. How much time do you take for your bath? Have you ever thought about it? How much time do you brush your teeth for? It is implicit work. You don't know how the time works around you. Explicit plus implicit, time moves slower because you spend an extra moment to understand or note down the moments that are happening to you. And finally, most of this talk, if it is a perceptual concept, how do we use this for time management? All of us want more time. All of us want the time to stretch or time to slow down. So based on what we have seen in this presentation, what are the factors that could help us to slow down time? First thing, being fast. This is the most common thing we do. Whenever we are in a deadline, we try to do things fast. Acceleration seems to stretch time. We have seen in the rocket, multitasking, rushing, last minute implementation, presentation, but this burns us out. After all, being fast also means that we are burning some fuel, and we do not know what this fuel is. Second, anxiety and triple F mode. That also seems to slow down time. Always being anxious, always being on the toes. Commonest example is preparing for an exam. Time slows down. We feel we might have an extra bit of time when we are very anxious, but it's an adrenaline rush movement meant for frightful situation. Being anxious slows down time, but it also makes this experience very, very uncomfortable. Using both explicit and implicit timing, does it help us to stretch time? Performing tasks with also involving the cortical part of your brain tends to improve or tends to stretch time. If you are engaging yourself in some activity, even if you are forced to do it, if you are able to apply your frontal cortex more to it, then more circuits are getting engaged and understanding this. Even boring lectures, if you are able to spend some little more time to try and understand this, then time seems to do better. Train your mind for shorter intervals. If the mind is trained to do activities of shorter time, then the time appears to be stretched when the task is performed live. Example, if you're training to answer a 100 MCQ question in 2 hours, then 3 hours might suddenly look like a lot of time. And finally, eliminate gravity and other pulling forces. The gentleman here is Dr. Bernstein. He had written one of the best books on vascular neurology. And whenever he wrote this book, he took a 1-month vacation from his place, went to a place and sat and wrote this book without any distractions. So the gravity or the pulling force means that when you are engaged in something that you feel you need to give a lot of time to, probably keep your phones away. Try to be in some place that is calm and quiet, which doesn't involve your distractions. And that also seems to stretch time. And finally, most important thing is feel and be younger. Feeling young, energetic and healthy shows to slow down time. Young people are constantly engaging and learning. This makes us appear as if time is slow. Before I conclude, if our metabolic processes slows down things around us or the vehicle that we are speeds up, correct? That is what I was telling you, the rocket speeds up. What is it that speeds up? I don't know. If things speed up around us, what do we perceive? Clairvoyance, the yogis being able to predict what the future looks like, or possibly the entire life flashing with us. So if we are metabolically ready to slow ourselves down, possibly our perception around us will also going to change. So thank you for your time or for allowing me to change your perception about time. Thank you. The tough questions I'll give it to Ellen sir. Sir, you chose this topic. Sir, please.
It's nice that you have brought in some scriptures, particularly Upanishad and related things. Our ancient knowledge was profound. One of the verses of Bhartrihari in Vairagya Shataka mentions, Trushna na jirna vayameva jirna. It is not desires that are olden out, it is we who really old out. Bhogana bhukta vayameva bhukta. Bhog, you know, no? Our lust and our.
Yes.
Then he says, tapana taptam vayameva tapta. Whatever austerities we do, penance we do, actually it is we who get tapt, not the tapt. And lastly says, kalo na yato vayameva yata. It is not the time that moves, it is we who move. In the axis where time is on the horizontal, and this is the linear scale of our life, he says that it is we who move on the timeline. Time is steady. The incidents happens when we reach there. It has already happened or it will happen. But for you, these incidents will happen when you reach there.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Sir.
Unidirectional, vector or bidirectional?
Right now, sir, I think it should, after this talk, what I prepared for, I think it could be multi-directional, sir, not just unique.
Fine. Actually, the neurosciences has strongly always believed that time is not a unidirectional vector. Time is a bidirectional vector, and what they are trying to do is as your thoughts go to and fro, the actions can also go on to and fro. So you can undo things which you have done in the past. So that's exactly where a lot of things are happening. When it happens in a Marvel movie where they go back on time and then reset things, and they're also looking at what is called time looping.
Yes, sir.
For example, you on a linear vector at point B, you loop it to point A, which you already crossed. If I loop it back, what you get is déjà vu. You feel that you have already seen this place. This is exactly what happens in your complex partial seizures, where all of us have a déjà vu, or most of us would have felt in some time in your life that this place looks familiar to me. So this phenomenon of déjà vu is because just the time lane you loop it out. And a lot of research is being done to loop your time. Then it literally becomes there's no end to you.
Yes, sir.
Because when you loop your time, you go back again, there is no death. The last point doesn't exist there.
Correct.
So you can see, I wish the youngsters should read in fact, if you look at the general brain, there'll be almost every issue carries 2-3 articles on time perception, time lag, time looping, all the experiments on time. So whole world is heading towards time. Thank you. Thank
sir,
you.
that the experimental physicists also know, sir, since they have defined time as a process, they can say that they can undo or redo a process. So once we think of the process can be undone or redone, then coming back or going front doesn't matter, sir, because that they eliminate the word time itself, sir. You are very true, sir. That is where they are looking. So the reverse engineering, what they're thinking about is, if we are able to reverse the process which had caused this, then we can actually go back. If we are able to bring that plant down to the seed level, then we have actually achieved going back in time.
And my hearty congratulations, Kaushik. You're done well. We're all happy. You deserve a good.
Sir,
Thank you.
thank you, sir. Thank you.